I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm coming out not as anything, just as myself, and it feels like a huge accomplishment for me to feel that I can just be myself in the world and share my love and not feel so hindered by by self-doubt and fear. So, I want to talk a little bit about that process, and I would like to tie it in with the last episode where I talked about how expression can take us anywhere and it can pull us out of any situation. So, I want to talk about the shifts in my daily way of existing that led me to this moment very naturally, where now I just feel that I can't hold myself in anymore, you know? So, yeah. I'm so grateful that I've come to this point, and I know that in a year from now, I'm going to look back at this and laugh. So, I just want to give a shout out to my future self. um, And I want to thank all the people that have helped me to come to this point, because it hasn't been easy and the self doubt has been so crippling, and the fear of whatever has just been, for some reason, it has felt so real, you know? And so expressing is key to liberation, especially when you've been abused and traumatized. And the way that I brought that into my daily life was just through one question. And it was, in any situation that I was in, and I've been in really, I've been in so many, I don't know. I've been in situations that I just look, it's almost like I'm looking at myself in that situation. And I'm like, how? Please, like, someone explain how. So when I've been in those situations, and sometimes they weren't really that funny in the moment, I was experiencing other kinds of emotions. So when I've been in difficult situations and I've been like, hey, what is happening? Sometimes my mind has this amazing quality where it likes to just analyze everything, and it's like, oh, maybe I should research this, and then I'll write about this, and then I'll go live in a cave for a year and I'll find the answers. So my mind has this little like trickster quality. um and this is where colors have been amazing for me, because these past years I've been connecting a lot more with the language of color, apart from painting as an activity, but like really bringing it into my body, into the way that I think, into the way that I feel, into the way that I move, into the way that I speak. It's fun, I like to play with colors and in myself. So whenever I've been in difficult situations, I just ask myself, okay, what color is this? And I see the color, or I see many colors, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So then I don't need to go so deep into this mental gymnastics thing. Thank God. Thank you, colors. And so if you don't really feel a connection with colors specifically, this could honestly be with anything that you feel connected with. It could be plants, it could be sounds, it could be places that you've been, it could be someone who you love, it could be your dog, like what would I feel if I tried to explain this to my dog? I don't know. You can create a whole fantastical world out of this, and you can have a lot of fun with it, So I feel like in the like in the whatever spiritual healing trauma movement, all of the things, crystals, like there's just so many things. And I'm grateful for a lot of aspects of this, but at the same time, there's a lot of bullshit. And so that's where I really just feel like it's powerful for us to connect with ourselves. I mean, that's really the whole point, right? Like connect with yourself. And you know what? Like sometimes I think it's important just to be like, hey, I don't need to be so serious all the time. I don't need to be so caught up in my healing trauma world, spiritual, whatever, like so many words, you know? What if I just allow myself to be a little bit childlike or playful about it or laugh at myself as well, you know? Because I've been honestly in some really intense situations, and I was just like, I just start to see life as a movie, you know? I see how I open the door to people or to situations or to whatever experience with my yes. And so, you know, coming from a background of being with someone who was incredibly abusive, it was really hard for me to say no and not feel like I was some criminal. It honestly felt criminal, and I honestly felt like this shame and this guilt, you know, of like, oh my gosh, you're so selfish, or all these different thoughts and all these different doubts. And I look back at all of this and I'm just like, man, that's so lame. That's so lame. Like, come on. But it's not easy to shake it off. And I have moments when, you know, I kind of like relapse into those feelings a little bit. But the beautiful thing about that is that every time that I start to feel those feelings or that thought comes up, it becomes more of a joke every time. And so, you know, I know that I made a joke about healing and spirituality and all that stuff. There are things that are true and are valid, and there are people who are really helpful, you know, in those spaces and are talking about things that are genuinely really helpful. But also I just feel like there's so much oversaturation of information. And so if you're already in a vulnerable state, being blasted with more information doesn't help. And it also kind of feeds into the not good enough narrative of, oh, I'm not good enough, so I need to learn this and I need to become certified in that and I need to do this thing and I need to do that thing. And then at some point, I'll be worthy, you know? And in the end, I think it's a worthiness towards ourselves, because we're really the only ones that are blocking love from coming in, life and love, you know? And I just start to see our choices and our decisions as kind of doors that we open and we close. So maybe there are decisions that you make that you're kind of like, yeah, I don't want to make this decision, but I'm doing it as a response to a certain situation and it's what I need in the moment. So you can open the door and you can walk in knowing that you're going to walk out soon, you know? So don't get stuck in whatever that decision is. Like let's say, for example, you were really traumatized and you didn't have a place to go, and so you went and lived with someone or whatever, you know? I'm just making something up, honestly. But like sometimes we have to make situations urgently and quickly for survival or for safety or anything like that. And so when I say, you know, decisions are like doorways, I also recognize the decisions that we have to make urgently as an emergency in the moment. But when we make those decisions, to not get stuck in them, you know? So going on with that example, like let's say some person let you stay at their house, you know? But now you feel stuck there because that person was lonely and so they let you in and you needed a place to go. And so you were like, okay, I just need a place to go. This person seems nice. But that person's actually really lonely. So now they want you to stay, you know? So the people pleaser thing is like, oh yeah, I'll stay because they've done so much for me. And like, it'd be so selfish for me to leave, you know? And so that's where I'm saying sometimes we make these decisions and we need to realize that, yeah, we're opening the door and we're walking in, but we're walking out very soon. And in other situations, when we have the chance to say no, it's a no, and that's it. Or when it's a yes, it's like, yeah, I'm in. And I can also leave whenever I want. I'm not stuck anywhere. Like maybe you say yes to going on a trip somewhere, and then you're like, actually, I don't want to go. It's all good. Like, you're not forced to do things that don't feel right for you. Just because you made a commitment and the trip is in like 2 months, I think it's okay to cancel. You know what I mean? Um, of course, within reason as well. Like, we need to be considerate of other people and the commitments we make. But and that's exactly the point. Like, we need to be responsible with the commitments that we make. And not say yes when we really feel no, because that's just a disservice to ourselves and to everybody. So that was a little bit of my sidetrack, but I feel like that's a really big practice of expressing ourselves, is saying no when it's a no, and saying yes when it's actually a yes, and saying maybe when we actually just need some time to think about it. That's a really genuine habit of bringing expression into our everyday habits. Because, of course, we can express ourselves through art therapy and through different mediums of expression. And those things are great. But if those beautiful habits of expression are only being awakened in one space of our lives, we're losing out of the fullness of what that really could bring to us. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I exercise every day, but I eat frozen packaged cakes afterwards. Like, okay, yeah, you worked out, but I mean, okay, come on. You know what I mean? So I think that these kinds of we need to really evaluate our habits and our ways of thinking, so how can I be more honest in my way of thinking, because I think what I've realized in myself, at least, is that my brain has this magical, beautiful, wonderful, so special capacity to make things way more magical than they actually are. And that's a huge coping mechanism, to try to deal with things that are really intense. I feel like we learn to create a buffer by creating narratives that aren't true and that don't feel authentic to us. I believe that there is magic in the world, but you feel it, you don't think it. And you definitely do not convince yourself of it. And so it's different levels, And so yeah, I think really to bring expression into our daily habits, it's, first of all, prioritizing it in our minds, like seeing it as something that's valuable. Because if your mind doesn't see it as valuable, you're never going to focus on it. And so it's just going to become one of those things like, no, I can't focus on what I actually feel because I have to work, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. But all of us can take 5-10 minutes each day and just be like, hey, how do I feel? Like check in a little bit. When I was living with my mom, I always used to go to the bathroom for like 40 minutes or longer, but I wasn't actually going to the bathroom. I would just sit there, because I was a kid and I was trying to like escape the situation. And so I would just sit there and be like trying to feel my body, and this is a really extreme example, but I still do it to this day. Like every time I just feel like I need a break, I spend extra time in the bathroom, especially at social gatherings. It's just a nice, like, okay, exhale a little bit. But yeah, my point with saying that is that there are always these little spaces, like, on your way to wherever, there's a little space, or waiting for someone, there's a little space, so Instead of us always filling those spaces with our damn phones, these horrible these horrible devices. No, 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 I'm joking. They honestly have a lot of benefits, but I think that we've gotten so in this thing of like, oh, nothing's happening, so I'm gonna watch like some YouTube or something. And it's okay if we're doing that with intention, but like when it becomes this automatic go-to thing where we feel kind of weird without it, that's where it is a problem. And so when we say we don't have time, I feel like oftentimes it's just because we're so in it, like we're so plugged in and we're so distracted. Because even when you're working a lot, you can take 1 extra minute in the bathroom and just take a deep breath. You know what I mean? A deep breath takes like 3 to 5 seconds. All of us can do it at any moment. And so no matter what situation you're in, try to find one space in the day where you can just take a deep breath and just be like, hey, how am I feeling? Am I okay with what's happening? Am I being authentic in my communication with people? Am I saying yes to things that I really can't commit to? Am I overloading myself with things? You know, I think all of us can take a few moments of each day to just be with these questions, especially if we've been abused in this way. Because what I've found is that an abuser really wants to make you lose your sense of self and almost become an extension of them. And so when you're an extension of someone else, I mean, your thoughts and your feelings are just kind of wish-wash for them. They're not real. For them, it's an expression of something that's not real. And so that's where gaslighting comes in of like, your reality is not my reality, so clearly it doesn't exist. And I think there might be something wrong with you, you know? And so that especially over many years, creates an inner dynamic of distrust, you know? So if we can take more moments to practice the habit of trusting ourselves and trusting our feelings, then we really come into this growth. You know, I really feel like healing and growing from things that have been particularly difficult or traumatic is just like anything else. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's a deep process of creating new habits. You know, it's like losing weight. Like, you're not going to lose 100 pounds in one day. You're going to do it little by little, and it's going to be sustainable over a long period of time when you can change your whole lifestyle and your whole thinking about your body and your thinking about food. I feel like it's very similar with healing and stepping into ourselves, you know? I think that there's kind of like this really I don't know. I feel like there's just so much manipulation within a lot of things that quote unquote spiritual leaders or spiritual people say. And I mean, I don't know. I just feel like there are a lot of these messages out there of like, oh, I mean, the power to heal is miraculous and you can do it overnight. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's true. I say everything's a maybe because who knows? Everyone lives different worlds. I'm not anybody else, so I can't say what's true for other people. But what's true for me is that this has been a process, you know? And of course, I've had moments of breakthrough and transformation that have been kind of like, whoa, okay, I'm not going back now, you know? But in those moments of breakthrough, then it's a whole other process of opening and really surrendering to whatever that epiphany you had was, you know? So it's not as just like, yeah, pay me $10,000 and I will make sure you have a breakthrough. It's like, no, you might have a breakthrough, but let's focus more on the daily habits and creating a new lifestyle and a new mindset and a new way of being that will actually be sustainable in the long term. Because oftentimes, like, and I've experienced this myself, like when I've had a really strong feeling of a breakthrough, I've felt super ungrounded afterwards because it's like this huge energy has just come into my body and I'm feeling so much and I'm like, wow, anything's possible. But my body and my mind has not been trained to be able to hold that every day. So maybe I have these moments that feel like an epiphany or feel cathartic and beautiful. But I feel like there's a really strong obsession with those moments sometimes, like in the quote, spiritual community. And I feel like this is where a lot of the manipulation comes in because it's like, oh, I'm talking to Jesus every single day, like I'm doing all this stuff. And it kind of makes people feel obligated to buy things from that person or feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough, so like I need to learn from this person. Or I feel like this is where the whole dynamic of guru comes from, of like, oh my God, this person is like my idol and I want to be like them. And so it feeds into the wounds of like not being good enough for a lot of people and being like, oh wow, that person, and it keeps people in the loop of, I'll never be good enough. I'll never be powerful. And I feel like a lot of, quote, spiritual leaders feed off of that. Like, honestly, they're not spiritual. They're manipulative. And there's a lot of that. And this is also a reason why I hesitated a lot in sharing, because I was just like, I'm so done with all of this. I just want to like live in a cave somewhere, because it's just so ridiculous how something so pure as spirituality has become so dark, full of people pretending to be shamans and raping people. Like, this is no joke. This stuff happens, and it's not okay. It's not okay to pretend something and use that to manipulate people who are particularly vulnerable. And this is the key for me. I feel like if we really want to heal and we really want to grow and we want to feel strong, we need to accept that we're vulnerable and that we've been wounded. That's the first step of strength, in my opinion, is to look at ourselves in the mirror and be like, hey, it hasn't been easy. And I open myself to the gifts as much as the pain, I open myself to both because I know that as I feel all of those feelings that I've been taught to suppress, I reveal all of the gifts that this experience has given to me. And so I feel like that's where this sense of power comes from, of, wow, I really do have it within me. And I also have the power and the worthiness to ask for help and support in that process. So I don't need to do it by myself. And I'm supported and I'm loved and I'm worthy of being listened to. I'm worthy of being held. And so this is where I feel the power of friendship comes in, honestly. I feel that a good friend can seriously heal us. And this is what happened to me. I met someone after everything I had been through, and I met someone who understood and could hear me out, and we could share and we could listen to each other and really love each other, even though both of us had our tendencies, we were able to support each other through that process, and we continue supporting each other to this day. So if you're listening to this, I love you. Thank you so much. You know who you are. I'm starting to tear up. So yeah, this is really where the power of friendship comes in for me. But it's magical to find a friend like that. It's not something that happens every day. It just isn't. And if people say that it does, that's great for them. Um, but for me, like a really good friend who seriously speaks the same language as you and you know that they're going to be part of your life for your whole life is something that is just so beautiful. And I hope that everyone finds a good friend like that. You really only need one. You can have two, you can have three, you can have seven, I don't care. But if you can have one person like that in your life, it will change everything for you. I promise. It's just it's so beautiful. And that's the thing. Money will never ever be able to buy you that, you know? Money can do very many good things for us, but the most essential things it will never be able to fully provide, you know? Like money will never be able to buy you the experience of harvesting your own food that you grew. Yeah, maybe you bought fertilizer, maybe you bought this thing or you bought that thing, but I'm talking like the actual experience. You can't go somewhere and be like, hey, I want this experience. Only you can create that for yourself. And I feel like friendship is also like that. So, so yeah, I think that's also a big part of it is, realizing vulnerability and saying, hey, I'm vulnerable. I need a friend. I need a good friend. I need someone who can really be there for me and I can be there for them and that we can grow together. We're not meant to do this by ourselves. We're not meant to. We just aren't. We're just not. And to be able to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, I really just need a good friend is so powerful. And it's such a sign of strength to be able to say that. Because I feel like this kind of like consumerist version of spirituality and healing or whatever is really based on, well, you are the healer and I'm going to activate this magical power that you've had from 7 lifetimes ago in one session when you paid me $5,000. And I mean, I don't know, like maybe there are things that actually work. There probably are. Who knows, anything. I live under the belief that anything's possible. However, there is a disclaimer, folks. However, I just think there's so much bullshit, Like you can believe anything's possible. But this rhetoric of like, I'm gonna make you this super powerful person in 2 weeks if you buy my program or whatever. Like, yeah, maybe a person can help you change your mindset or they can support you in the process that you're in. But genuinely, it's a process and it takes time and it takes support. And it doesn't just take support from some guru, it takes support from your community. It takes the strength and the courage to say, hey, you know what? I'm struggling. Could someone just listen to me for 20 minutes? Could I just have a tea with someone and just talk about something that's really difficult for me right now? I feel like, and I'm not subduing the work of people who work in healing practices at all, because that's a big compliment to this. I see it as a compliment. I don't see it as the fundamental thing, It's like you go to a doctor and a doctor guides you into what you can change in your life and they give you a prescription. There are different kinds of doctors that provide different kinds of prescriptions, but a good doctor will say, hey, start changing this habit in your life, or start eating more of this, or do this, like they'll suggest habits to you, things that you can incorporate into your daily actions, and they can guide you through that because they know what you're experiencing, so they can give you what you need. I'm talking about good doctors. uh, Not all are the same. Um, but for me, that's a compliment. It's an aspect of a healthy life, you know? Um, yeah, it's an aspect. It's not the whole thing. And so I feel like there are a lot of people that feed off of this vulnerability that so many people feel. Like, when you're lost and you're in a dark place and you're like, I'll do anything for some relief, there are a lot of vultures that are just totally feeding off of that and spreading lies about how, oh, if you do a session with me, your whole life will change. Maybe your whole life will change. That's totally possible. And great, But the truth is that you don't need that in order for your whole life to change. And the people who say that you need it are the people to seriously watch out for. The people who say, hey, this is a compliment, this is an aspect, this whole different story, One time, I was really inspired by someone. So my friend said to me, she said, hey, there's this healer who I was living in the city of Lima at the time. And Lima is a huge city. And so like in the outskirts of the city, there are a lot of hills and it's a desert. So in one of these areas that are a little bit more deserted, she's like, yeah, there's someone there. I was like, okay, sure. Let's check it out. I was super open. And he works a lot with magnets and the magnetic field of the body. And he looked at me and he said, look, like, I don't want people who come to me to come back. I hope that what I can give to you is enough for you to continue on your own path, I hope that I can offer you tools and I can offer you information that will be helpful for you. And that to me is really what the healing profession is about. It's about supporting. It's not about all these lies that people are saying about, oh, the miracle healer, like, I don't know if you've heard about the scandal with Oprah, but there's this guy from Brazil called John of God, and Oprah was like, oh, this magical healer. And so a lot of people started going to him, and there were all these reports of sexual violation. And so I like to talk about these things because I feel like everything has two or more sides. There are always so many different sides of a story. And I think it's really important to talk about this because I just feel like not a lot of people talk about it, or I feel like a lot of the people who do talk about it are super skeptical to like everything. And I'm not skeptical, really. I used to be when I was a lot younger. I used to be super closed off because I felt really against religion. And I felt like, brah, like I don't want anything to do with this. But honestly, I have this belief of like anything's possible if we can imagine it and really work with it enough, like we've done so many incredible things as human beings that people 300 years ago would be like, haha, you're full of shit. That didn't happen. That's not possible. How many times have great things happened when people have said, oh, that's not possible. You're crazy. That'll never happen. Well, it happened, so I think you were wrong. So yeah, I really believe in our capacity to imagine, and and I love it, like I really feel like whatever we can imagine, we can start creating, and that's the fun of connecting with our childlike side and our playful side. And that's a lot of what I share with Unconditional Colors, because for me, channeling has a lot to do with opening our imaginations up to things that we might not have ever considered to be possible before. And that's something that I'm going to talk more about in another episode. But if we can just open ourselves to the possibilities without becoming so like attached and fundamentalist about things, we can live a life that's genuinely really fluid and enjoyable, like children, like we can have that freedom and that peace of mind of like, you know what, I don't have all the answers and I never will. And all those people who say they have the answers, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. Maybe you have some great insights or some great realizations that you can share, but anyone who walks around saying that they have the answers is someone who I really feel like is on some crazy ass trip, because genuinely, we don't know. We don't know. And there's such a freedom in not knowing. Of course, I can see the things that I can create concepts about the world, and I can say I know this, or I can say I know that I love you, for example, because I feel that so strongly and it feels so real and I know that it's true for me. I'm not denying or saying that nothing is real, but I'm saying that what we perceive as real is totally subjective. And who even knows? Who even knows what the underpinning of all of this reality is? It's a question, and there are a million different perspectives, and that's the fun and the excitement of being alive. And for me, that's also that's connecting with the different colors and the different expressions of life. Because I can give you a scientific explanation, I can give you a poetic explanation, I can give you an artistic explanation, I can give you any kind of explanation of anything, because this world is full of many different colors and many different ways of seeing the world and many different perspectives. And so when we change our thinking to be open to all of those perspectives and to be open to all these different feelings and to be open to things that kind of blow our minds and things that go beyond our habitual ways of thinking, life becomes so much more colorful and we can have so much more fun. And we're constantly growing because we're trying new things in our way of thinking. And something beautiful is that the mind doesn't know the difference between what we're imagining and what we're actually experiencing. And so we can play with that, we can use our imaginations to create to create a world and to create communities that is strong and that's full of love, and to create a way of living that's based on harmony, you know? And I feel like when we are really honest with ourselves and our ways of thinking, we become so much more receptive to other people and their ways of thinking and their ways of feeling. And we become so much less judgmental of like, oh, why are you feeling that way? Like, there doesn't have to be a reason all the time. And that's another thing as well. Like, if we can stop questioning our feelings so much, and if sometimes we can just allow ourselves to feel them first, and that's what I really love about colors, because I can say to myself, okay, my mind is starting to go haywire. What color is this? And that color starts to make me feel something. And so I'm like, okay, sweet, I'm feeling, and then clarity comes. But clarity doesn't come from brute force. I feel like clarity is a gift that we receive when we cleanse our minds and when we open to be part of the flow of nature and to be part of the natural world, and to allow our minds to unify with the natural world rather than continuing this separation of like mind versus nature, mind versus body, rationality versus creativity. It's like we unify the different forces within us. yeah, I feel like that's super special, you know? Um, so bringing expression into our daily habits, you know, it comes down to you. It comes down to what you need to express. It comes down to how much time you're willing to put towards that or how much time you have for that, you know? But I really believe that when we prioritize something, we can always find time for it. We always find time for it, especially when it's an addiction. We always find time for our addictions, you know? But when it's time for ourselves and to do the things that we need to do for our own personal growth, oh no, I don't have time. No, sorry, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. And so that also needs to shift. The excuse mindset. Of course, sometimes we have limitations of many different things, you know? Children, work, this thing, that thing. It could be anything. But within those limitations, there are always opportunities. And it's our choice whether we're going to take those opportunities or whether we're going to keep focusing on all the limitations. And that's like a baby step process, you know? It's like, okay, tomorrow I'm literally going to wake up and take 5 seconds just to ask myself, how do I feel? I'm going to take 5 seconds to just take a breath, you know? And these little habits, once you do it for 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, yeah, it's already part of your brain, you know? It's part of your routine. But then after, I think it was 6 months, it really becomes nailed in as a habit. And then I can't remember. There's a whole there's a whole build up with this. But yeah, I always make the goal of like, I'm just gonna do this for a week. I'm just gonna try this thing out for a week and see how I feel. And then I just take baby steps from there, you know? So after a week, I'm like, okay, did I like that? Did it work for me? Did it improve my life? If the answer is yes, okay, cool. I'm gonna keep building on it, you know? If the answer is no, yeah, okay, cool, it didn't work for me. That's another big thing. And this is another really big power we have when we're truly focused on our personal expression. When people are like, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and you need to do this. When you're just genuinely so in tune with your feelings and your expression, no one can ever tell you that. Because some things don't work for everyone. I really believe that everyone has their own way of doing things. And what works for me might not work for you, and that's okay. There's no shame in that, because if we can accept that, then we can actually find the thing that works for us, you know? I think that there's so many people, and I've fallen into this myself. It's like, okay, you should do this thing every day. Okay, you do it every day, and then you're like, man, I don't want to, you know? Like, this doesn't make me feel good. But then it's in your mind of like, oh, it doesn't make you feel good because you haven't pushed through it yet. You got to push through it, you know? Like, there's all this like motivational speaker kind of stuff. And sometimes, yeah, there are moments where we really need to kind of push ourselves. But you know when you need to push yourself. Nobody else knows when you need to push yourself. You know. And you know when it's not right for you. And you know when it is right for you. And that's the power, you know, that's the power of trusting ourselves and taking those steps every day to be like, I trust my feelings. I trust my body reaction. I trust my thoughts, you know, like begin to open our thoughts and to find the thoughts that are genuine versus the thoughts that someone else programmed into us. And this is a process. That's really my point. This is a process of, first of all, saying, hey, I'm vulnerable. I'd like to change. I need help. I need support. I'm making a lifestyle shift. And I'm moving one day at a time. I'm moving one step at a time. And there is no finish line because this isn't a race. there's nowhere that I need to get to. As I practice expressing myself, I will become better at expressing myself every day, because just like anything else, it's a muscle and it's a habit. And especially if you've been abused, it's even scarier to unlock that. So it's a process, and then you get to the edge and you're like, okay, that was a lot for me. And so you see kind of where your limit is at that time. And then you just go baby steps, like we don't have to, this kind of like hustle grind culture, I think, has kind of also penetrated whatever the personal development world is. And things just don't work that way. Like if I plant a seed in the ground, depending on what that plant is, it will take a different amount of time to grow. And am I going to judge the sunflower for growing more slowly than the daisy? That's ridiculous. All of us have our moments, we have our times, we have our seasons, we've lived different things. And as we make expression a priority and a practice, we will get stronger every single day. So, yeah, find your question, find your question that when you're in a difficult situation, you can go to kind of move out of your mind and move more into your feeling. My question is, what color is this? But your question could be, what spice is this? What plant is this? What image is this? It could be anything you want, because what works for you is what works for you. And that's amazing, So I hope that you got something good out of this episode. My thinking process is always kind of like like a roller coaster. So thanks for staying to the end. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you had fun, Yeah, I'm just sharing, and I'm really grateful to have the space to share, and I'm grateful to feel like I can come out into the world. It's a huge step for me, and I'm also taking baby steps with this, and I'm also kind of like pushing my edge and seeing how I can keep progressing, and not hold myself back, but also not, break my own leg, so finding my own pace. And it's just an honor to share this process and to be able to, support other people's processes. It's the best feeling ever. So thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in colors, you can follow me on Instagram at Unconditional Colors, or visit my website, unconditionalcolors.com. And yeah, if you're not interested in colors, that's also totally fine. Find what works for you. And once you find what works for you, that's your truth. That's what you need. And that will only spread more love into the world. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being open to express yourself more.